Good morning, everyone. I declare this meeting of Kempsey Shire Council open on this day, the 30th of August, 2022. All members of the Kempsey Shire community are welcome to attend council meetings to observe. Please refrain from interjecting or undertaking any behaviour that would stop councillors from undertaking their important task of decision making. I remind all people attending this meeting that it is being webcast on YouTube with audio and vision. A recording of the meeting is available on the internet and is required to be available for 12 months. Private recordings of the meeting should not occur. Only members of the media are allowed to make a recording. Please ensure all devices like mobile phones are on silent mode. On behalf of Council, I welcome all people in the public gallery and observing live on the internet to our meeting today. Councillors in attendance are Councillor Simon Ferguson, Councillor Dean Saul, Councillor Arthur Bain, Councillor Kinney Ring, Councillor Anthony Patterson, Councillor Alexandra Wyatt, Councillor Scott Butterfield and Councillor Kerry Riddington. Council staff in attendance are Mr Craig Milburn, our General Manager, Mr Steve Beasley, Acting Operation and Planning Director, Mr Steve Mitchell, Director Corporate and Commercial, Mr Daniel Thorogood, Manager Governance and Information Services. And I welcome the other staff that are here with us as well. This is the first ordinary meeting of this council after the by-election on the 30th of July. I especially welcome the new councillors with us today. Councillor Kinney Ring is our youngest female ever elected to Kempsey Shire Council. She is a local who has experienced qualifications in higher education. Last year, she became the manager of the Macleay Valley Country University Centre, located in Kempsey Central. Welcome, Councillor Ring. Councillor Dean Scott Butterfield is a local Fredericton person who is fully engaged in working in the Shire. He is married with children. He is ably supported by his wife, Alicia. Welcome, Councillor Butterfield. Our final newly elected councillor is Dean Saul. He is an experienced councillor, having been elected to council in 2004 and served until December last year. Welcome, Councillor Saul. Shall we all welcome our new councillors by acclamation? Thank you. We shall now begin the meeting. First order of business is the opening prayer, and I ask Councillor Saul to present that, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Dear Lord, help us in our deliberations today so our decisions will be for the greater good for the whole Kempsey Shire. Amen.
Amen. I'll ask Councillor Bain to do acknowledgement of country, please.
Marangbu, Mr Mayor. Barang Marang. Dangati Guten Ditten Bari. Nyana Bubita, Nyana Buboro Bukul, Pandunga Kai Malamangu, Dangati Guten Ditten Bari. Danang Maraga, Titinja Baria, Marangbu. I said, good morning. This is Dangati country, from the river and the plains, from the mountains to the ocean. This is Dangati country. May we be well in this place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Item 3 is for apologies and applications for a leave of absence by councillors. As we have all councillors here, I don't expect an apology, but thank you for all being here at this very first meeting of the new council. We now move to item 4, which is confirmation of minutes. The recommendation is there before you. It's that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Kempsey Shire Council dated 19th of July 2022 be confirmed. We need someone who was attending that meeting to move that motion. Councillor Riddington, please. Would you like to speak to it?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? We need a seconder. Councillor Bain. I'll put the motion. Is there any dissent from confirming the minutes? If not, I declare it carried. For our new councillors, instead of asking for who votes in favour and who votes against, we just ask for those who vote against. That's the dissent vote. It makes it much quicker to do that. So we'll continue on with that procedure. We now move to item 6. Oh no, this disclosures of interest, item number 5. I missed that one. I apologise. Disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? I have one, but anyone else? Right, I'd like to disclose a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in item. Get it in a moment. 9.3. Yes, planning agreement for a park at Crescent Head. I would like to disclose that I know 2 directors of one of the 3 companies that are proposing this development. Are there any other disclosures? If not, we'll move on to number 6, items passed by exception. I also welcome our media representative here this morning too. I didn't see you there earlier. Thank you. There are, for the new councillors, we have these items that most people consider should be just voted through because there's no need for discussion, or no one would likely be voting against it. But if you wish to withdraw it, you can withdraw it without giving a reason, and you can withdraw any of those items. So there are 6 items there. And yes, so if you don't wish to withdraw them, but you have questions about them, you can ask questions about any of those items as well. Thank you, Mr. General Manager, for reminding me. So if you have a question on any of those items that are the items to be passed by exception, you can ask them now or you can withdraw them. You also could ask questions and then decide to withdraw them. So it's up to you. Are there any questions on any of those items, please? And by the way, I'll be withdrawing 9.8, which is the KLEP 2013 Employment Zones Reforms. Are there any questions on the other items?
Oh, not a question. Withdraw items.
Okay. Yes, Councillor White, please.
9.7 and 11.1, please.
Right. So that's so far we've got 9.7. 9.8 and 11.1. Are there any other items people wish to withdraw?
Sorry, hang on. Did I say 9.6?
You want to change?
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
9.6.
Yeah, the corporate performance one.
So 9.7 is back in the items by exception, and we're going to withdraw 9.6, 9.8 and 11.1. Are there any other withdrawals? Councillor White, do you have something else?
I'm just waiting for that to change. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, I just have a different thing on my screen. Sorry, that's what I definitely wanted to withdraw, the corporate performance and the...
Thank you, Councillor White. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask for a mover. Right, well, who would like to move this? Councillor Saul. We have a seconder. Councillor Wyatt. Is there any debate? If not, I'll put the motion. Is there any dissent from the items passed by exception as the 3 items on the screen? If there isn't, I declare it carried. Item 7 on the mayoral minute, there is none. Item 8, there's no reports of committees. We now come to 9.1, the election of the Deputy Mayor on page 8. I've been informed by the General Manager that there are 2 nominations, so we will be having an election. And we now have the recommendation before us is that Council 1 elects a Deputy Mayor until the September 2023 ordinary meeting of Council, and 2 conducts the election, if required, for the position of Deputy Mayor by open voting. Is there someone who wishes to move that? Councillor Bain. we have a seconder? Councillor Riddington. Councillor Bain, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just a question, Mr. Mayor. Do we have an opportunity to hear from the candidates?
Yes, I'll be asking for the candidates to speak to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or debate before I put the motion? There isn't. So I'll now put the motion. Any dissent from the motion recommendation? Oh, it's a motion now before you, please. Thank you. I declare it carried. Just to clarify, the recommendation is in the agenda. When someone moves, it becomes a motion. And when we pass it, it becomes a resolution of council. So it's got three names: recommendation, motion, and resolution. It's now the resolution. We have an election right now. And so I'll ask in the order of nominations, Mr. General Manager, for a short speech from candidates.
Councillor White.
So, Councillor White, would you like to speak to why you wish to take on the job of Deputy Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. So first up, I'm grateful to have been re-elected as a councillor. It's difficult to prove worthiness in 6 months, and I thank the community for putting their faith in me and re-electing me. And I'm calling myself Councillor Alex 2.0, new and improved. I think that's every version, new and improved. It's always a learning thing. I was Deputy Mayor previously. Again, I was grateful, and I feel like I was just warming up. I had a couple of opportunities to represent council and the mayor. Loved it. I feel I have really good public relations skills, very good leadership skills, and very good community engagement skills. I also firmly believe that this council and the team in general need to represent community. It needs to look like community. Look at us. We have in this country, we have 50.2% identify as women in this country and 50.8% identify as women in Kempsey. There's only 3 of us in this room, and there's no females in the leadership team, and females are very underrepresented here. So I think as a deputy mayor, I think it's good to have a leadership team that looks like community, that we can represent community. That's why I would like to be given the opportunity to continue being deputy mayor from 6 months to another year, please.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Patterson, please.
Thank you. Once again, I appreciate the opportunity that the community has given to me by the support they've shown me through the election period, and also through the 11 years of previous experience that I've had on council. 2 years as deputy mayor. I've looking for support of my fellow councillors here this morning. Just with the working with the organisation, I believe it's very important, and it is very important to hold those certain communications and decisions within this room, within council chambers when required. I have a vast experience of dealing with council as a builder, as a businessman, as a ratepayer and a community member. I have a long-term friendship and advocacy with Liz Campbell, the previous mayor, who served on the council for 2 terms as mayor. I also believe that our community needs a strong leadership and support that I can guarantee to supply council as Deputy Mayor, and I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I thank both Councillor Patterson and Councillor White for, on behalf of the Kempsey Shire community, for nominating and standing up and hoping to serve in this position. I'll now hand the election over to the General Manager, who will conduct the election for Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The election, particularly for the new councillors, it's quite as simple. You've actually already resolved to do this by open voting. What that means is by show of hands. So it's quite simple. What I'll be doing is asking you to put your hands up very clearly, so not like this, but up so we can actually see, for the candidate you are supporting. And the vote will be done in order of which we received them. We received Councillor Wyatt's first, and then we received Councillor Patterson's. Makes it very simple. There's 9 of you, so it does make it fair. Sorry? Yeah, you only get 1 vote. That's the thing. Yes, you can't vote twice. So if we end up with, 5 or 6 or something like, we're going, something's gone wrong here. No. All right, so councillors, if you are supporting Councillor Wyatt as the Deputy Mayor, can you please raise your hand very clearly? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, thank you. If you are supporting Councillor Patterson, please raise your hands very clearly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I declare Councillor Patterson elected as Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Can I just have 1 second?
Thank you. Councillor Patterson, congratulations on your election as Deputy Mayor. I hope we can work well together. And I'd like you to respond to your support of your councillors, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my fellow councillors, for your support. And honestly, we'll be representing every part of the Macleay truly and honestly. And I have forgotten to mention about the support of my number 1 fan who's sitting in my mother, Margaret Patterson. And if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. And I thank Mrs. Patterson too for attending and being so interested in the working of Kempsey Council. We now move, after that event, we'll move on to item 9.2. It's a planning proposal, and it's for the place at 1022 Crescent Head Road, Crescent Head. And the recommendation is there before you. And I'll be asking for someone to move the motion, and then I'll be looking for a second, and then I'll be asking for any debate. So a mover, Councillor Saul. A seconder, please. Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Saul, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
No, Mr. Mayor, I think it's straightforward. I think it's well applied. I think it should be bonus for our community.
Okay, we'll go to the debate now, and if anyone wishes to speak in favour or against the motion before you, or ask questions, this is the time for that to happen. Do we have any questions on the matter before us? Councillor Wyatt, please. Couldn't see you.
I just want to confirm that this enables subdivision of this into the smaller block, and it's a one-off for this. It's not for rural residential in general.
Mr. General Manager?
Yes, that's correct.
And the next stage to this will be for that draft planning instrument to be prepared, and then that goes out onto public display.
No, this has already been on exhibition.
The LEP instrument. Isn't this?
No, this has already been on exhibition. It was on exhibition. Just trying to find it on the report. There was no public submissions. It was on exhibition through July, and there was no public submissions received.
Sorry, I thought that we then went to prepare the actual instrument, the LEP.
Yeah, that's right, but it doesn't go on exhibition.
That's okay, right. And then after that, you go through a DA proposal, presumably for the subdivision and anything further.
Correct. Yeah, there's more planning if they want to develop this in any way.
Yeah. And let's have a general question about community consultation. What is the usual catchment size for personal communication or notification from council? It's double-barreled. Is it legislated, and if so, which act? And is there criteria for the catchment size of people consulted and the method of consultation? And then what does council do beyond that legislated requirement?
Yep.
Yep, I've got that. Yep, I've got it, Leo.
You've got?
Yep.
Okay, so is that Mr. General Manager, please? Thank you.
depends on, through Mr Mayor, depends on what the application is. So whether it's a development application, whether it's a planning proposal, other different things. Particularly with things like planning proposals, there is legislative within the EP&A Act, the timeframes and an understanding of where or how wide that needs to be. We also have I think it's called a guideline. I'm looking at Mr. Reinhold at the back there. You might be able to tell me if it's a guideline or a procedure which we use to determine exactly what it means for us locally. With a DA, there's complying development, there's all sorts of different DAs, and they require different sorts of consultation depending on the nature of them. And then we also have the discretion, and we do use that discretion at times if things look like being a bit more controversial, of actually broadening out what is actually set out in those guidelines as well. What we can do is provide the councillors with more very specific detail on those, but it is different depending on the nature of the application, whether it's a planning proposal, whether it's a DA. There's a lot of different criteria that goes around to actually determine just where that goes.
Thank you, Councillor White again.
I would appreciate some more of that information, please, at some point. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Bain, please.
I'd like to speak in favour of the motion. I think I'd like to point out two very positive things about it. One, the way that the boundary and the separation of the two lots has been set up has minimal, if no impact at all on vegetation, and the location of the building envelope is also fire safe and accessible without having to clear any further vegetation. So I'm very happy with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Any Councillor Patterson, please.
Could I have a question on that, please?
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Through the General Manager, possibly. The new Rural Fire Service regulations on creating a fire safe zone around a house, is this development one of those first developments that is using that? Because I understand it's a 50-metre fire zone now that existing dwellings require around them.
Mr. General Manager?
Through Mr Mayor, I'd have to take that on notice just to get the details. I'm not aware of all the very detailed specifics of that, it being a planning proposal as opposed to being a DA, and where that bit of legislation fits is at the planning proposal stage of the DA. So I'd have to come back to you on that.
Yeah, because I understand it has to get a nod from the RFS to actually proceed.
Yeah, there's been comments from the relevant state agencies on this application.
Yeah. Thank you. I do support it.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Bain, please.
Yes, I'd just like to note that in the papers in front of us, there's a comment from the Rural Fire Service. There's no concerns or issues in relation to bushfire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. If there's no further debate or questions, I will put the motion. Once again, it's a motion put with dissent only. So if you're voting against it, you vote now, and I won't ask for who's voting in favour. Is there any dissent from the motion in front of you? I declare it carried. We now move on to the next item, 9.3, which is on page 15. It's a planning agreement for a park at Crescent Head. It's actually a voluntary planning agreement, but now it's been renamed to a planning agreement. The recommendation is there before you. And before I ask for a second or a mover, and I'll come to you in a moment, Councillor Patterson.
Yep.
I'd like to clarify with the General Manager point 3 of the recommendation, if I could. It actually delegates to you, the General Manager, the authority to execute the agreement if he is satisfied, if there's no further changes required. If you're not satisfied, there's nothing in the recommendation that tells us what would happen next. Would you bring it back to council? Is that the basically the question I would be putting?
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, certainly what item 3 does is use the delegations to allow myself as the General Manager to execute this if there's no further changes required. If there's further changes required, I don't have that delegation, and therefore it has to come back to council.
So that's
Yep.
automatically in.
Yes.
Okay, that clarifies that. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. I'll now ask Councillor Patterson, you're prepared to move it? Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Butterfield. Thank you, Councillor Butterfield. That wasn't too hard, was it? Thank you very much. So we have a move and a second. I'll ask Councillor Patterson, does he wish to speak to the motion, please?
Yes, I'd just like to make a comment about council working with the developer on this, and the great outcome it is for the community, that the community will gain an asset that everyone can use in that area, as well as a closed-in dog walking area, which is getting pretty elite now out Crescent Head, where you can walk your dog. So, no, I really appreciate the fact that this is another example of council working together with the community, and this particular developer did get a great outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Any further debate? Councillor White, please.
Just a couple of questions, please.
Yes, certainly.
So I read the agreement. I like parts of the agreement. They're very good in terms in the fact that, you know, there is contract in place for them to build it, for council to have input into what it looks like, and to also do a bit of quality assurance. So I think that's very assuring for the community to understand that it's not a set and forget. So that's very good. That ticks that box. My two questions are the $635 per lot. Is that current valuation, and how on the contribution plans, and how is it actually worked out?
Thank you, Mr. General Manager, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. The levy amount is the current levy amount, for development in that area. I'll do a short answer on this because the long answer will be here for an hour. So with development contributions, the state government has what we call Section 7, 11 and Section 712. The EPA Act allows us to levy contributions on developers for the impact their development has in relation to the broader area of the community, so whether it's around the local area, in this case, around the Crescent Head area. That contribution can cover impacts on roads, parks, general community areas. It is related, however, to the extent of that. So if you're having a greenfield site and you're building a whole new subdivision, then the developer has to cover all of those costs. If it's, in this case, a new subdivision of 100 lots across the whole Crescent Head area, it is in proportion to that impact. So it's only a fraction of the total cost. So that's how it actually gets distributed. But it is actually one of the more complex areas of local government is the contribution planning areas. But in this particular area, they obviously have to develop the roads and provide that back to council. That is part of their contribution. And then obviously the park that's in this as well. In addition to that, they have water and sewer contributions. So they've got to put the sewer into our standards. There's a pump station in here and things like that. And that's all done as part of their water and sewer contributions, which is a whole different contribution plan.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. It's a quick question. I already know the answer, but when the park is completed, who owns it, please?
Council.
Council. Thank you very much. Councillor Bain.
Just
Sorry?
So two questions. One is I just want to be confident that if we approve this recommendation, that it's not presupposing that we must approve the DA on the development, because I believe that isn't finalised yet. And the second question is that I know council returned the initial plan for the park back to the developer and included the fenced dog walking area, which is great. I'm wondering if it's too late or if there's the opportunity for us to ensure that there is shade provided over the playground, because I think it's a very important issue for future parks in our area.
Thank you. Mr. General Manager, please.
Yeah, in relation to the design, there's no detailed design at this point, and we'll be actually looking and working with the developer on that. where possible, what we try and do with council, this is a general comment about a playground, it's not specifically around this. What we try and do is develop shade trees. So we're actually trying to be very environmentally sensitive about the way we develop our parks and get the shade trees in there. They provide the shade, but they'll also, obviously have other environmental benefits as opposed to putting up, nylon shade sails and things like that. So that's our preferred approach. But we will work with the developer on this to work out what's the best way to actually provide that.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson, please.
Just another question through to the General Manager. I understand this type of park as well is a new development that council's negotiated. Previous developers over the years used to hand council a parcel of land and say, there's our park, we'll move on. What's your comment on that, General Manager?
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think both developers and councils have learnt a lot about development contributions over the last couple of decades. Developers understand far more now the value of putting in good community infrastructure in their developments. It actually increases the attractiveness of those developments and therefore increases their price. So putting a relatively small amount on a subdivision into things like a park add value and they actually really recoup those costs. And from a council point of view, we've got a lot better at not just accepting what we used to term the old pocket park, but working with developers, as in this case, to work with them to get something that is, provides a greater community benefit than what we would have, probably accepted 20 years ago.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Any further questions? Councillor Saul, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. I applaud the idea. If we can set this a precedent in our community, I think it'll bring far more beneficial and far more community agreement having a park in there and be seen to be done. In the past, we've actually said earlier, John Manager, we've had pocket parks done, which end up being neglected. So the thing is, if we can get this done and it can be a showpiece for the community, it can be a precedent for further developments showing that we do want something of good quality and not just been shoved in the corner. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Saul. Councillor Wyatt, please.
Yeah, thanks. Just there's an interesting point in here, and at the risk of being labelled green, there's an interesting point here. It says that this current levy for Crescent Head catchment under the plan is $635 per lot, equates to $68,000, which contributes to being offset. This is far below the market value and has noted that the applicant has not sorted any credit for this. So what the applicant is saying is that, hey, we're doing a great thing. We're giving you $68,000, but the actual value of that land is way below $68,000. Further up in that document there, it says that the land has very little value to them. So I don't think it's, and this is a legislative requirement that they have to do a development contribution plan. I'm not discrediting it. I think it's a good idea. But just remember, this is a legislative requirement. They haven't just put up their hand and say, hey, guess what? We're going to give the people of Kempsey a park. So I'm not discrediting it. I'm just saying let's not sugarcoat what this is. This is a legally requirement development contribution plan for a park.
Councillor
not
White.
A native park, a dog park or a playground.
Councillor White, Mr. General Manager would like to make a comment there on your comment.
Yeah, through Mr. That's actually not quite accurate. What it says is the contribution proposed to be an offset. It's below the market value of the land. So the applicant is actually giving us more than what they actually are required to give us. So it's actually, they are providing more than what they're actually legally required. You are right, they are legally required to do this, but they are going over and above what their bare minimum actually is.
Councillor White.
It says has not sought credit for any difference between the land. Yeah.
That is correct. They could ask credit because the value of the land they're giving is more than this.
Thank you, Councillor White. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Any further debate or question?
Just a comment through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Director Beasley, please.
Yep. Whilst the land hasn't been valued as yet, the approximate value of the land is between $400,000 and $600,000 that they've offered
For each plot.
Yeah, for that spot, and $100,000 approximately for the infrastructure. So whilst we haven't got a valuation, that's what we believe that it's approximately worth. So it's quite a good benefit.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Councillor. Director Beasley. Councillor Whittington, please.
Thank you, Director Beasley. Can I just clarify? So are you saying this portion, that's the park, is that 600 odd thousand? Can you just clarify that for me? I really didn't get my head around it.
Well, the park is about 3,700 square metres. So when you look at that in terms of the approximate land value, it's a mixed use, for that area. It would be between about $400,000 and $600,000. We don't have a proper valuation for it because it's not there. And we believe it's probably about $100,000 for the infrastructure. So
for the actual park.
Yeah. So the cost of the land would be between $400,000 and $600,000 and $100,000 for the infrastructure.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Whittington again, please.
No, I just said thank you.
You nothing more? Thank you very much. Any further questions? Councillor Bain, please.
No, just that first question I asked, that if we approve this planning agreement for the park in Crescent, it does not presuppose that we are approving the whole development. Is that correct?
Councillor Bain, I think that was already answered, but I'll ask the General Manager again, please.
Yeah, no, actually. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I did forget to answer that one. Yeah, that is correct.
Thank you. There'll be no further questions or debate. I'll ask Councillor Patterson if he wishes to speak in closing debate.
Just on closing, yes, that I do understand that this has nothing to do with passing the development as a DA, but it is once again a good result for the community, a good result for council, and a good result for a planning issue that really was pushed past the envelope that it needed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. I'll now put the motion as before and ask only for dissent. Is there any dissent from the motion before us? I declare it carried. It is now the resolution of this council. Thank you. We move on to 9.4, which is on page 18, carryover and revote budgets. Steve, did you want to speak? Yeah. I'll ask Director Mitchell to introduce this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this is a paper that comes to council at this time every year. So generally we'll present this report to the August council meeting. What it essentially does is enable the budget for certain projects to be provided for in the financial year that we're just in. So at the start of each year, we'll obviously set and adopt a budget which council will adopt. There'll be variations to that through the year, through the quarterly budget review process, but invariably not all of those projects will be delivered for a variety of reasons. And in the case of this year, as everyone would know, the impacts of flood and consistent wet weather have had a significant impact on our capital works delivery program. So when we get to 30 June, in an ideal world, all projects would be delivered, they'd be closed off and that'd be it. Invariably, there are projects that are in progress and also projects that haven't been commenced, even though they're included in our operational plan. What this paper does is then just effectively seek approval of council to shift that budget through to this current financial year. So for those projects that are in progress, that they can be completed, because obviously you don't want to have a half-completed project, but we need the budget to be carried forward. And also then for projects which we still need to deliver but haven't commenced as at 30th of June, for those to be revoted. So there's a couple of sort of different terms used there. Revotes for projects that haven't been commenced and we want them to be revoted from last year's budget to this year, and those projects that are in progress will be carried forward. So largely administrative in nature. We've tried to put as much detail in there as possible so that councils are aware of what those projects are, and also to include some commentary to explain the current year proposed revotes and carry forwards as against as against last year. And as you can see, it's slightly higher. And as I indicated before, that's largely the impact of wet weather, which has had a significant impact on our capital works delivery over the last 12 months.
Thank you very much, Director Mitchell. The recommendation is there before you, councillors. It is that Council approve the rollover of the 2021-22 budget for carryover and revote projects outlined in this report for inclusion in the 2022-23 budget. I need a mover, please. Councillor Riddington. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Ring. Thank you, Councillor. Again, wasn't painful. Well done.
That the first one.
Thank you very much. The mover, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to commend the finance section and Director Mitchell on this document. I know how hard it is with emergencies and disasters, and I think it's really good to have a clear accounting for what we need to roll over and what we need to do for the next financial year. So I commend this motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Riddington. Do we have any debate or questions? Councillor Patterson, please.
Just a question. I do understand that there's quite a few projects here that are possibly staged. For instance, the Ryder Park Flying Fox Camp Management. It's up to plan level 2. I'm just concerned that too much delay will allow too much regrowth to happen in something like that. And putting back to you guys, I understand the management in getting all these carryovers done without pushing too many staged projects out of whack. So that's definitely going to be a challenge.
Mr. General Manager?
Through Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments on that. Just broadly more for the public understanding. The difference between a carryover and a revote. The carryover is projects that have already commenced, and hence that's the largest portion of the funds there. Revotes are projects that were in the budget we hadn't had the ability to commit to start, as Mr. Mitchell had actually said, and this last financial year in particular was very challenging in terms of the weather. Specifically about the bats, the issue, it's a complex issue because the work can only be done depending on particular times of the season, and also weather has an impact on our ability to get into those sites as well. So there are projects like that will go over financial years just simply because of the nature of the project and having to deal with seasons where we can actually get into different jobs to do the work.
Thank you. Councillor Ring, please.
Knowing, looking back at the last financial year and the floods and I guess the weather events that our area is prone to, planning into the next year, do we make contingency or allowances for these things, or do we go for a best case kind of scenario?
Councillor, Mr. General Manager?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, we certainly try and the capital works program this year is by far the biggest the council has ever adopted with these revotes and carryovers. If you adopt that, you're up to about $120 million a year this year. Last year, we delivered around 45 million. So we've got to almost treble that. We are looking at the potential for that. We know that now that they've got a 70% chance of another La Nina, we're likely to have a wet summer, which will certainly have a significant impact on our works program. We're also still experiencing supply chain issues and those sorts of things as well, both in terms of materials and labour. So with the first quarter, particularly what we call the quarterly budget review, will come to council for the end of September. They'll come to the November council meeting. We'll be having a very hard look at that capital works program, because I do not believe with those headwinds already facing us that we will get to that 120 million. We need to probably bring that back down to somewhere around the 80 to 100 million maximum. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt and Councillor Riddington, please.
So that in the report here, you've got 10 projects, but I think it represents 200 projects. how will council ensure, or how will council ensure that these are delivered in this financial year? What risk management and other mechanisms or procedures will be undertaken to ensure that it's not cumulative year upon year upon year?
Thank you. Mr. General Manager, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. From a councillor's perspective, we provide a report every quarter to the councillors on the actual projects, so they actually are able to keep tracks of that. Probably the main thing we've done organisationally is that we've actually, in November last year, established a project management office where we appointed a number of project managers. We were actually in the process of recruiting another 4 or 5 project managers to assist with the delivery of those projects. The rolling out of those, of the capital program we've got is very extensive. Our ability to deliver that effectively requires obviously internal resources, but also external resources. So we'll use a balance of our internal staffing resources to deliver it, and also contracting and tendering out to the private sector where that's appropriate as well. So if Mr. Mitchell wants to add any more to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add to what the General Manager's said, Councillor White, in response to your question, I guess in relation to risk management, obviously each of those projects, so our adopted project management governance framework that's been established at the same time as the PMO has been established has a tiered approach to projects. So those really large projects will have a significantly more level of governance around them, and obviously that includes regular review of risk factors associated with those projects and the delivery of those projects. And that gets reported on a monthly basis to the project sponsor and to our executive leadership team. And then there's similar sort of levels of, cascades down, I guess. So once you get down to some of the smaller projects, there's less governance, but obviously in every single project there'll be a project plan, which will be commensurate with the size and the risk of the project, and the risk will be considered as part of that. So we've made significant step forward in terms of our governance from a project management perspective. We're still, fine tuning and improving and looking to manage those projects in an even better way. But I guess the steps that we've taken and the structures that we've put in place will give us sort of greater level of confidence that we can manage those risks as best we can, noting that a lot of the risks that we encountered that impacted last year's delivery were items that were sort of largely out of our control.
Thank you, Director Mitchell. Councillor, you follow up? Councillor White?
Follow up. It's not. It's a statement.
Councillor White, and then Councillor Reddington again.
Yeah, thanks for that. So, just confirm: is project management a relatively new thing in council? You're talking about employing like project management teams and project plans and risk management. Is it relatively new? Like, how long have you been doing that for?
Yeah.
Mr. General Manager, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, project management isn't. We've been doing that, or certainly they're doing project management before I imagine they've been doing it for a very, very long time. What we've recently done, though, is established a project management office, which has dedicated project managers within that, and they report across the program of capital works. So the establishment of project management offices in both the private and public sectors is probably something that's really come more to the fore within the last decade.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Reddington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, so we've got $120 million worth of grants and to do all our CapEx work. This is just a general thing. What triggers do we have within the grant applications themselves? Are we on top of that? So if we get close to missing a milestone in a time frame, because that's what normally comes with grants, what happens then? Do we go back to the state government or to the federal government or to whomever has given us the grant and say, where do we go from here? Because we don't want to lose the money.
Thank you. Councillor Reddington. Mr. General Manager, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. There's $120 million in our capital program. Not all of that is grants. I'll just clarify that. A reasonable amount of it is, but a range of that is coming from general fund and water and sewer funds, so money that we've actually been accumulating for these projects from the ratepayers and other own source revenue. With each of our grant funded projects, we do sign a deed with the relevant government, whether it's state or federal government body, to deliver those projects, and there are milestones to deliver that. Part of what we've done with the project management office and corporately is we've actually also set up a project management framework, which involves project control groups. So all of our major projects have project control groups, which then interact with the state agency. So we are in constant contact with the relevant state agencies, both in terms of the reporting, but also if timeframes are getting squeezed for different things. And I'll use an example of some of our water projects. We get delayed with those where we're waiting for state government approvals, and therefore we can't meet construction timeframes because we've been delayed by external factors. So we're in constant contact with the departments that are relevant to the grants to inform them and keep them in the loop, and to then gain extensions if we require them. The other thing that's happening across the whole sector at the moment is the government's very, very aware of the amount of funding that's been rolled out really since the drought. We've actually had 4.5 years of unprecedented funding. That drought funding, bushfires, COVID, floods. We've had, and this is across the sector, and particularly across the east coast of New South Wales. So they're aware of the amount of money that's flooded the market, and therefore the ability to source materials, the ability to source labour, and we're seeing unemployment rates at all-time lows. So they're looking at what they can do to assist, and they're certainly being more flexible with those timeframes. And the other thing that obviously everyone has experienced is the massive increases in construction costs of materials and labour and that sort of thing as well. So the government's conscious of that, and is working with ourselves as a council and other councils to try and work through how you still deliver whatever you can with the funding you've got, or for them to top that funding up, and they're looking at processes for that at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Thank you. I really appreciate that explanation. Thank you, General Manager.
A follow-up question from me, if I could, Mr. General Manager. In your time here, has we not been given an extension and lost a grant?
And no.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Saul, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To General Manager or Director Beasley, I'm very pleased to see that roads are prominent back in our revotes to be done. The question is, do we have enough staff, or do we using contractors to get the projects completed?
Mr. General Manager?
Yeah. We use a combination of both. So we'll use our staff, and they're certainly flat out, but we use contractors as well. So it really depends on the work that's there, the nature of it, and the capacity we actually have internally as well.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Need further questions? Yes, Councillor Patterson, please.
Yeah, thank you. I just through the General Manager, just following up on Councillor Saul's question about the roads. With the possibility of an El Niño coming up, so more weather, that our roads are going to get put into a worse condition than they currently are. Is that perhaps a priority that we may be looking forward to, especially with the community interest in this area?
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Mr. General Manager, please.
Yeah, certainly the wet weather that we've had over the last, and particularly the first 6 months of this year, had significant impact on our roads, and all the roads again that in other shires were similar. Probably just broadly, I could categorise our roads probably across 4 categories here. We've got really from Kempsey down, the downriver sort of roads, and we've got the upriver roads, and then we've got our sealed roads and unsealed roads. They're all impacted differently by the wet weather. Obviously, our upriver unsealed roads, they're going up through gullies, and a lot of them aren't on flat areas, so there's a lot of runoff and things like that, and get damaged because of that. Our downriver sealed roads in particular are on a floodplain, and it's very, very hard to find a foundation on an extensive floodplain. So council has to balance the funds we have over the demands for a road, and just how far can we reconstruct or build a road or repair a road to a level that's acceptable. You can actually, and I know on Plumbers Lane, there was sections on Plumbers Lane a couple of years ago where we were going down 1,200-1,500 millimetres to try and find a foundation. Once you start going down that depth in a road, you'll go from building a kilometre of road to building 200 metres of road. It's that sort of decision you have to make. And again, the downriver roads, the water It's the tar on the top is just like a raincoat. It's actually not the road. It's actually just a raincoat. It really is there it's the wearing for the tyres, and it keeps the water out. What we find in downriver is that the water comes in underneath because it's a floodplain and it sits there. So it gets into the foundations of the road, and that's why you start to see that movement. So for us, it is going to be and will always be an ongoing challenge for a council with dealing with roads on the floodplain and dealing with gravel roads, particularly in steep terrain, to actually keep on top of those. What I can say this year, though, is that we've got the most we've ever put into road repair and maintenance, and that is in excess of $40 million this year, which is a very, very positive thing for the council and the community. And that will be spread across resealing roads, resheeting of gravel roads, repairing them, and doing a lot more what we call heavy patching. So where there's significant impacts, and you would have seen some of that work here in Elbow Street. There's been a range of things out South West Roxy, Gregory Street just recently as well, where we do heavy patching, which will fix those roads for a lot longer. But it is highly complex. But as I said, we've invested more this year than what we've ever had.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Patterson again, please.
Just to follow on from that, General Manager. Obviously, most of the east coast of Australia are on a floodplain. I was just wondering about the technology that that council's always searching for, the possibilities of the technology advancements in building roads on floodplains, because this, at one stage, I suppose it may seem like we're chasing a never-ending rope sort of thing. It's something that we need to have possibly better outcomes in the future with, and I don't know, maybe technology, maybe type, it may be design. Yeah, just wanting your comment on that, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor. Most of the places on the east coast don't have a floodplain like we've got. It's fairly unique, the Macleay floodplain. There's the sheer size of it and the level of roads we've got on it. But yeah, in terms of technology, council is always continuing to look at what the options are for us to improve the way we deliver things. Recently, we've improved our standards. We've actually adopted some state government road standards that we now are meeting to and putting in place the procedures to ensure that. We've increased the level of testing on the gravel that's being supplied by the various suppliers around town to ensure that's actually meeting the requirements for it. We've been looking at what we do in terms of our machinery and weights of pad rollers and things like that, to give us the actual best outcome. Sometimes people will think, a heavy roller is better. But if you put a really heavy vibrating roller on something that's actually got water under it, all it does is bring the water up. It's actually quite a lot of work that the engineers do to work out what is the best method of actually building or repairing or resealing a road in a particular area. We've been doing a lot more work where you will see the big machines come in and they'll chop the road up and then they roll it back down, but they actually put stabiliser in that. So they'll put a cement type product in that to help stabilise that as well, which gives that a lot more strength. So that's one of the more modern things that's actually happening with roads these days.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Is there any further debate or questioning? If not, I'll put the motion that's before you after I hear from the mover, if you wish.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that discussion and I commend the motion to my fellow councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Riddington. Is there any dissent on the motion before you? Carried. This is now the resolution of council. We move to 9.5, which is the Local Government New South Wales Annual Conference 2022. There's a recommendation before us. There's 4 points on what council will do. I'd like a mover. Councillor Bain. Seconder, please. Councillor Patterson. Councillor Bain, please.
Yes, I'd like to commend this motion or resolution to my colleagues. The Local Government New South Wales Conference is extremely important in that it gives us an opportunity to lobby state government, particularly around issues of cost shifting. For example, the pressure that's been put on local governments to take responsibility for RFS assets, as was discussed in our previous council meeting. It's a really good opportunity to network and find out what's going on with other local government agencies. For example, I know that the South Sydney Local Government Joint organisation is looking at is doing a pilot project in using crumbed rubber for improving roads. So those are kinds of things that when we can get down there and we can talk to other local government areas, we can find really good solutions to move forward. So I commend this resolution to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. So it's Councillor Bain, I'm sorry, my apologies. Yes, I can't tell you apart, they're twins. So very quickly, if this motion is passed, we'll then have a vote or nomination process for finding the 2 voting delegates. But first of all, are there any other questions or debates, please, on this? Councillor Riddington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe this is probably better after the motion's been passed, because I've got some questions on voting and how we're representative of council during the voting at this local government conference. I don't know if that's appropriate now or wait till we pass the motion.
Well, I think we'll do it after we've moved it, and then we'll come to that. I'm sure we can have a move in the committee and have that discussion if you like, Councillor Riddington. Any other questions or debate? If not, I will put the motion after Councillor Bain wishes to speak. No? Right, I'll put the motion. Any dissent from the motion before you? Declare it carried. It's a resolution. I'd like to ask someone for us to move into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Riddington. A second of that. Councillor Bain. I'll put the motion. Any dissent? We're now in the Committee of the Whole. Therefore, oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. When we have a Committee of the Whole, people can speak as often as they like, and we can come to some decisions and talk around the councillor group to come up with the decision, and then we have a motion to come out of the Committee of the Whole to our new councillors, and then we can implement whatever the decision that happened within the Committee of the Whole. So, Councillor Riddington, you were talking about the voting procedure. Could you like to explain your issue, please?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I attended last year's conference and it was really valuable, and I would really hope that a lot of our colleagues attend this year. My question is, we have 2 voting delegates. Now, when you, sorry, 3, so the Mayor and then 2 from council. Yep. So when you're voting, are we voting as individuals, or are we voting as a council, or are we voting as representative of a party? Now, Arthur, I don't mean this disparagingly at all, because I have a high regard for you. No, I don't. So I really, really would like this clarified, because I personally would really like to be a voting delegate. Because I didn't get an opportunity to vote last time, and I'd really like us to rotate with the voting, and I really would like to have a strong discussion when we go to council conference about which way we should all be voting, because I don't believe that we should go down there, and this is nothing to do with Greens. I don't believe that we should go down there with a specific agenda. Thank you.
Okay, we might get some direction there, but very quickly, could we have a show of hands of those people who intend to attend the annual conference? Oh, well, I don't need to go. Yes, I will. Thank you very much. That's all of us. That's excellent. And it's great that we're going to have so much participation from our councillors and that interaction that Councillor Bain talked about with other delegates. So we need a further
Yeah.
input, possibly for General Manager on voting delegates. Do you want to?
Could I? We're still in workshop as a whole.
Yeah, we
Could I
are.
speak to that, please. So,
Yeah, I'll come to you in a moment. Councillor, yes, Councillor Bain.
yeah, I was a voting delegate at the last local government conference, and I believe that we consulted thoroughly on each motion. I hope that's the memory that people had. And when there was a difference within a group, the 3 voting delegates voted according to how the people that were sitting there. Some people weren't at the business. They went to the conference, but they didn't attend the business papers. They went off for various reasons. I believe that I represented the council accurately because I have a commitment as a Green. I have a commitment to grassroots democracy and to being representative. There were 129 motions, a lot of motions. As you would all be aware who were there on the first night there, I went with a group of Greens councillors where we caucused, a non-binding caucus, where we went through the motions, identifying ones that may have. Well, I had a very good idea of what the motions were. We spent that whole evening going through business papers while other people were out at dinner doing stuff. And I had a really, really good idea of what was coming up. In fact, I believe that I helped our council representatives understand what was being discussed at the meeting. It was pretty overwhelming. I have a history of representing fair views, and I have a commitment to being representative and to be, as I've foreshadowed twice previously, I would like to self-nominate as a voting delegate. Thank you.
Well, we'll come to nominations in a moment. Thank you, Councillor Bain. Mr. General Manager, do you wish to add anything there?
Yeah, probably a couple of things. Our custom and practice is the Mayor is one of those voting delegates. That isn't in legislation. I think it's just our custom and practice for that to actually occur. And I think actually every councillor been that the Mayor's been, when they've been able to attend, has been one of those voting delegates. So it's not just our custom and practice. It's pretty normal across councils. The role a councillor plays in that voting is that you are voting as an elected official. You certainly should be considering the views of the other councillors in that process. But at the end of the day, you will need to make a decision. There will be what will come from this, and you've seen the last dot point in this recommendation is for any nominations or any motions you want put forward for them to come up to us, and we'd be asking that they come in by next Friday so we can get them into the September council business paper. So at the September meeting, council will determine motions to put up, and I would suggest that if council has determined that motion be put up, that would be a clear indication that the voting delegates would definitely support that motion, because that is the formal position of council. But that's only in relation to the motions we are putting up. The other motions that are there, the proper role of the council is to consider the motion on its merits. You may wish to discuss it with the other councillors and then you vote how you believe you are to vote. I think that's probably the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Councillor White, please.
That was a train of thought. Two questions. So the last time it was like a council meeting on steroids. I mean, they just ran through so quick, and whoever is going to be the delegation to vote, you really need to do homework and read is my strong suggestion, and that includes sitting down and reading hundreds of pages of papers, because that is what you are going to be elected to do. That's the first thing. And the second thing is I agree with Arthur. We did all sit down as a group and do it together. But it's really like, in the end, we're all going, yeah, we vote. So the first few bits we were being a bit official, and then the next we're going, yeah, we'll vote for that, yeah. So it was a bit of a free-for-all and a meeting on steroids. And my second question, part of that, is more directed to us as councillors. So I had to put up a motion, and Does it have to be voted by all of us here? Because I don't want to waste my time if I'm going to put up my time and council's time that have helped me. I don't want to waste my time if it's going to not be supported by this group here. So any feedback?
What is it?
Okay, thank
Tell you
you.
what it is, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager, and then Councillor Saul, please.
Yeah. The Councillor White's correct. It is a bit like a council meeting on steroids. It does happen very quickly. The motions get moved and passed very, very quickly. So you can imagine you've got a council meeting with literally hundreds, a couple of hundred different voting delegates. Imagine sitting around here if there's a couple of hundred people voting. So it does happen. It is done electronically. The voting is done electronically for it. Most of them are passed pretty, I wouldn't say unanimously, but overwhelming majority. There's been a lot of thought put into them before they come up, from the councils. And there's only normally a small number that are either lost or close. But certainly there is a lot of pre-reading for those who are voting delegates with it. Just in relation to Councillor White's motion, the place for that to be debated will be next council meeting. You can certainly talk to your councillors between now and then, but it'll actually be the decision will need to be made at that September council meeting about what council formally puts up. But yeah, you certainly, like any other times, you can be able to talk to the councillors about what you're thinking. And I'd encourage any councillors who are thinking about putting a motion up, and Councillor Baines already drafted one as well, to talk to the other councillors before next council meeting about what you're proposing and why.
Thank you, Councillor Saul, and then back to Councillor White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Mayor, sorry. Mr. Mayor, it takes just a bit of pass. Adjustment. Mr. Mayor, as you are aware, the debate on the floor of the conference can get quite heated, but sometimes they bring up items we haven't considered. So, often you should be flexible. You have a position on something, but councillors should be aware that if a debate comes up and points are made, haven't been considered, we should be flexible enough to consider that as well, without being blindly yes, no, and no around it. So the thing is, remember, the debate can be sometimes, even here, you might think of something and then you hear a debate and you have a change of heart. So remember, we need to be open-minded down there on the floor of the conference to make sure that we are able to do the best vote possible. So I would ask you to consider that as well.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Councillor Saul. It's pretty logical that if you go from a position that all the councillors here have taken and you then listen to the debate and you get in new information, then you may change, but then you'd have to explain to your councillors why you changed. And you've listened to the debate and come up with good points, so that's why you would change. So, Councillor White again, please. Councillor Riddington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate everybody's discussion on this. My main reason for opening this debate was to have it made clear as to how the vote works, what your responsibilities are, how you're going to process information. It was not about going down there with a fixed mind. It was not about not being open. I just wanted it clarified on the record of what this involves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riddington. If there's no further debate, I'll ask for us to come out of committee. Or do we?
I know we don't always, but it would be best if the committee would formulate a recommendation to put back to open council before we leave. Of course,
and my mistake, I apologise. We actually need to work out who our delegates are, the voting delegates. So we can have nominations or self-nominations at this point. Councillor Patterson?
I'd like to, can you nominate two people?
If you want to.
Yeah, could I nominate Dean Saul and Councillor Riddington?
Do we have any other nominations? You can self-nominate. Councillor Bain?
I believe I've indicated I'll self-nominate and I would support Councillor Riddington's nomination.
Thank you. Still in the committee, so we will. Councillor White, please.
Someone asked me, did I want to discuss the motion, is it appropriate here, or do you really think, or is the preferred method to do it outside of council meeting?
The motion you intend to put up. Yeah, I think we're kind of jumping the gun on that one. We need decisions now on who our candidates will, the voting
So I need
delegates
to
will
have
be.
this in, yeah, but I need to have this in by Friday.
Okay, Councillor, Mr. General Manager, please.
The motions don't need to be in until after the next council meeting.
I understand that, but you asked me to submit my motion by Friday,
Yes.
which I work full time. It's going to take a bit of work to do, and I've already had a meeting with council staff, and I will do my best to get that to you on Friday afternoon. I'm happy to talk about what it is now or at lunch.
Yep.
Well, I think you should talk about it now if you like, and that way we've got it clear in our minds, and then we'll go to deciding the voting delegates.
Okay, so the motion is around these ghost DAs, development applications, and given my background in environmental science and environmental law, wanting to look at how we can amend the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act so that we don't have ghost DAs. So I've had a meeting with council staff about some of the things that we can do. And the motion will be something along the lines of go with the Queensland model, where the DA has a limitation of 5 years, and then they have to get an extension for that 5 years. So we can't get rid of the ghost DA as such. So we can't do it retrospectively. So on a scale of 1 to 10, if we wanted to do it retrospectively, 10 would be the optimal outcome. So we could say all those DAs have all lapsed, they have to be modernised. Can't do that because the government is unlikely to go that path. Like, that's the best outcome. So we work backwards from there to 1 being no outcome. What the best outcome can be is to do what the Queensland model does, and that a DA doesn't expire after 5 years, but there is a requirement for them to re-extend. So if there's any changes in that time, like any biodiversity values, any social values, any communication values, any road values, flooding, whatever it is, they have to reconsider those, and they also have to modernise their conditions. And that is I'm going to put up a motion, something along the lines of that local government, New South Wales, right to or seek support for the state government to amend the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act to make it more in line with that model. I'd have to work up exactly what it is. And that's sort of that's recognising a bit what's happened at Southwest Rocks and what's happened in the community there. And they are community, we do represent them. They are upset by the fact that we've got 30-year ghost DAs out there, and it's all coming to fruition now. So this is a way, and same with the coast. I know Arthur is involved, and you might be involved, but there's a coastal committee as well of all other coastal councils because they're all facing these problems. Have a look at Port Macquarie. So that's my idea for a motion, and I really hope that the 7-8 of you support that, because I think it would be in the best interests of all coastal councils along the New South Wales coast.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt, and from what you've just said, I would support it too. But I'm going to ask Councillor Butterfield if you have a comment.
Yes, this is either through Mr Mayor or Mr General Manager. Just through my lack of knowledge, what is actually a ghost DA?
Okay. Now, who would like that?
Yeah. Through you, Mr Mayor.
Mr General Manager.
It's a term commonly used in communities and in planning and that as well. Ghost DA is really a DA that was approved many years ago. It might have been 15, 20, 30 years ago, and it has been deemed to have commenced. So they may have done minimal work. So I might have got a DA, say, for a subdivision 30 years ago. I did minimal work, which allowed it to be activated. And then I've just sat on it for the next 29 years and done nothing. And then all of a sudden now I've activated it. This is what we've been seeing at Southwest Rocks, for example. I've now decided to go in and do that subdivision. The issues with it is that because I'd started it, all the conditions of consent were the ones set 30 years ago. So I don't have to comply with today's standards. So it's a real issue for the community, for councils, where people sit on DAs for very extended periods of time without activating them because legislation changes a lot.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Very good question, Councillor Butterfield. So we've got 3 nominations so far. I'll ask for any more nominations for the voting delegates, and then I'll hand the voting over to the General Manager for a decision. So we've got Councillor Saul, Riddington and Bain as nominated candidates, nominated voting delegates. Do we have any others?
So are we, does that include you? So are we voting for 2 plus you, or are we voting 3?
Two.
So 2. So it's a given. So we have
it's in the motion that we've voted.
Yeah. But it's a given that the mayor is a voter.
Yeah. Determine
Without
the
us
2 other voting delegates is the resolution. So are there any other nominations? Self-nominations, nomination someone else? No. Right. I'll hand over to you, Mr. General Manager. We have Councillor Saul, Riddington and Bain as nominated for the position of voting delegates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just confirm there are no more nominations before we go any further. No, just those 3. All right. And I'm going to make the assumption we'll be doing this by show of hands for it. So in this case, you actually get 2 votes. Okay, so you get to vote for 2 delegates. All right. And I'll go through them in the order that they were received, which is Councillor Ridding, Councillor Saul and Councillor Bain. So you are able to vote twice. So Daniel and I will keep an eye that you don't vote more than twice. So we can keep track of that. We'll be writing down who votes for who. So so remember you get 2 votes. So your first vote for those supporting Councillor Riddington. Okay, that's okay. Can't get any more than that. Okay. So everyone's only got 1 vote left. All right. So that makes it much, much easier. So Councillor Saul. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And that was Dean, Anthony and Scott. And Councillor Bain. That is the balance. Okay, so the 2 voting delegates will be Councillor Riddington and Councillor Bain, and along with the Mayor. All done.
We're done. All right, thank you very much for that, Mr. General Manager.
So we've moved.
We move back into open council, but I need a motion for that to happen. Councillor Bain. And a seconder, please. Councillor Riddington. I put the motion. Any dissent that we move back into open council? No dissent. Thank you. We now need a motion to adopt the fact that our 2 voting delegates are Councillor Riddington and Councillor Bain. Someone like to put that motion? Councillor Ferguson puts that motion. Do we have a second of Councillor Ferguson's? Councillor Butterfield? Is there any dissent on the fact that our voting delegates will be Councillor Riddington and Bain? 1. Thank you. I declare it carried. And that concludes 9.5. 9.6 was withdrawn. I think we've got time to deal with that and then go to morning tea. So the recommendation is before you on Corporate Performance Report 2021-22, the 4th quarter. We have a recommendation before us. Would someone like to move that? Councillor White. Seconder, please. Councillor Bain. You wish to speak to it? Councillor White.
I just have some questions more so to speak to it. I mean, I'm happy to support it. It's a very good summary. The attachments are particularly useful, especially the grant one, but I just have a few questions,
yes,
if I may.
You may ask questions.
First, would Director Mitchell just like to give an outline for us, please? And then I have a couple of questions, or do you want my questions first?
Okay. You can only do one thing at a time. You can only juggle one ball.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Would you mind just giving up? Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Giving us a summary?
Director Mitchell, and no reflection on your physical abilities. Sorry there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so councillors, this report is a quarterly report that obviously comes to council 4 times a year. Slightly different, the one that comes in August, in that it's the sort of gives a reflection of the end of financial year performance. So the 3 other quarterly reports that that you receive at the November, February and May council meetings have a decision point which is associated with the adoption of the quarterly budget review. So any budget changes that are proposed, council will adopt those when they receive those quarterly reports. In this particular case, what we've provided to councillors is a report that gives a summary of our provisional financial result for the year. So as you're aware, we'll go through an audit process of our financial statements, and which will occur over the next couple of months. What we are endeavouring to do to give visibility to both the councillors and to the community is an indication of the financial result for the year just finished that's in the same format as the budget that was adopted and the quarterly budget reviews that are reported to council and adopted on a quarterly basis. So it's not a legislative requirement to provide that. It's considered best practice, and from an executive leadership team perspective, we think it's really important that we give that view to council and the community. The financial statements will be 100 pages of pleasure and joyful reading for people who choose to read those, but they are quite technical in nature, and so the report that we've provided is hopefully something that's more easily digested to give an understanding of our financial result. What we've also included attached to this report, which Councillor White referred to, are the other documents that we do report to council on a quarterly basis. So our financial sustainability program, so an update in terms of the delivery of that. We've also included the full year view in terms of how we've gone in relation to those key performance indicators that were adopted at the start of the year. We give a progress in terms of the delivery of our operational plan for the last 12 months, and also an update around grant summary and the status of our grants. What I would say, and this reflects some of the comments that I made and some of the questions that were asked in relation to the revotes and carryover paper earlier today, in relation to the delivery program and operational plan, you can see that we have reported that we've delivered on 81%, which is less than the target that we'd intended to deliver, around 90%. And again, the reasons for that are the same reason that we had projects being revoted or carried over to the current financial year, is that those delivery of those items was largely impacted by the flood event and the continuation of wet weather. So it's not just that they impact the delivery of those, or in a number of cases, resources, both outdoor workforce and indoor workforce, are reprioritised in terms of dealing with the flood event and then the response and recovery from that. So that explains some of the under delivery, if you like, in terms of the items in our operational plan. The financial result is quite good. It probably masks to a certain extent a little bit our ongoing financial sustainability issue that we've talked to councillors about, and that was made very clear in the long-term financial plan that was adopted. So we've done our best in terms of delivering everything as efficiently as we can, and that's reflected in the financial result for this financial year. But we've got a lot of work to do in terms of maintaining that, and as is articulated in the report, there's a significant amount of operating grants which obviously prop up our financial result, which may not necessarily occur into the future. So that's probably enough around the summary. I'm happy to take any specific questions that need clarification.
Councillor White, you said you had some questions before you spoke to your motion. Okay, you're not going to be speaking to your motion. You've got to do that before we do anything. That's how it works.
Beg your pardon?
You have to speak to your motion before we get other questions.
Oh, I'm happy with what I've spoken to the motion. I'm happy to support the motion and recommend that my fellow councillors adopt it.
You can reserve the right to comment. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, thank you. To the General Manager or Council Director Mitchell, could I just get an update on delivery of a couple of major projects? You may have to take this on notice or not, but we're looking at the Eden Street Clubhouse, where the cricket nets were, the old cricket nets on delivery date, and also the Eden Street Netball Clubhouse and the Kempsey Sewer System Network.
We would like to have a go at that.
I mean, the first part of the question, what was it?
Right, so it's
Give me an update on
that.
that. What was the first project?
Eden Street.
Okay, yeah.
Eden Street.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
Yeah, Eden Street's well developed. We're actually just finalising the design for the netball court and the main grandstand facilities, and then they'll go to tender, and that will complete that project once the work's tendered and constructed.
2 years, 1 year.
I'm loath to put timeframes on things at the moment, given the supply chain issues.
The community has asked me questions.
Yeah, I'm a bit hesitant to put definitive timeframes because it really depends on when we go to tender, how that actually sits. We're already having some experiences with how long companies will put their fixed lump sums on, and that's an issue. So I'm a bit hesitant to put definitive timeframes, but the construction for both of those, once they're let, they'd be constructed within 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the sewer system.
The main sewer, that's still got a fair way to go. There's still a lot of stages of that. There's still approvals being processed. We're into the concept design for that. So there is still quite a number of years before the West Kempsey sewer will actually be developed. I can say that I believe we finished commissioning the South Kempsey sewer project last week. So that's actually from Puma all the way through. The South Kempsey sewer is now hooked up
and running.
And the Stewart's Point sewer, we are finalising the design for that. The testing and the bore samples have actually been taken from the Junal area where they will be sending the treated effluent, and also that work has also been undertaken on the treatment plant site. We're looking to go to tender for an initial part, which is going around house to house to work out exactly what and where every individual system needs to be put in, which will then allow us to flow into the main tender for all the actual works. That I'm trying to recall from the present time again. I think it is the completion date for that is 2024 for the entire project. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Thank you, Councillor Patterson, for the question. And I'd also recommend that the General Manager, as soon as possible, 3 of us have seen these series works in preparation. I'm sure the other councillors would be very impressed with what's going on already. So maybe further on we'll have a works tour. Councillor Saul, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, on page 30 of our agenda, just want to ask you, is there any more work to be done on the Clyde Street Mall car park renewal, please?
Mr. General Manager?
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, I believe the works are completed there. If there's anything specific, let me know. But I believe the works, that main car park and the new amenities, I think that work is actually completed. But if there's anything specific, let me know.
Now, electric vehicle charging points might come in the future, Mr. General Manager, and there's a location there for that.
Yeah, there's we're actually working with, I guess, a range of providers at the moment, looking at EV charging points across different places in the Shire, both for generic EV charging and also Tesla charging.
That'll bring people into town off the highway. That'd be great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Wyatt, please.
Firstly, I think 81% achievement on the operational plan, given that we had all of those events, fires, floods, droughts, pandemic. I think that is a good achievement. 81% is a good achievement considering all of those problems. And I remember recently you said that July, like June, July was a really bad month for COVID in the staff and for Kempsey. So rather than looking at that, I think we should look at that in a positive light and say, well done for achieving 81% of your operation plan amongst extremely difficult circumstances and constraints that we've not seen that before. So well done to doing that. I also noticed that in the top 20 projects that you have there is, we all say we all need to fix the roads, and we all hear roads, potholes. 50% of those projects in the top 20 are roads. So that's also a positive thing to see. There's always room for improvement, but 50% out of the top 20 projects of capital works are roads. So that's a good thing to see as well. I'd also encourage people to go and have a look at the grant folder, which is 9.6.5, which has 7 pages of an Excel spreadsheet. So that's pretty little of all the grants that council have applied for. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it adds up to around $58,000 in operating and capital costs. You know, we all want better deal for our rates money, but you know, we don't want to pay. No one wants to pay massive amount of extra money. Our rates and charges brought in certain amounts and it's topped up by grants. So I think go and have a look at those grants, that grant table, because that's mighty impressive as well. And that's council staff working hard to do the paperwork, to compete on a statewide level and perhaps even a national level to get those grants. I've done that in my work and they are particularly stressful, particularly tedious, and there's no guarantee at the end. So congratulations on that, getting 7 pages worth of grants, and I really encourage people to have a look because it's awesome.
Thank you,
And
Councillor.
now my question is, can you just please explain what the it says financial sustainability strategy and financial sustainability strategy roadmap were adopted in April 2019. Can you explain what both of those are, please?
Yep.
Thank you, Director Mitchell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So Council, not long after the new executive team started, one of the first things we started to look at was around financial sustainability. And what we did at that stage was develop a financial sustainability strategy, which was sort of, I guess, at a higher level in terms from a strategic perspective, and then supporting that was a financial sustainability roadmap, which had, from memory, 28, I think it was, actions or initiatives across sort of 3 sort of key sort of themes. So that came to council, and I'm pretty sure it went out on public exhibition. It was adopted anyway by council back in April 2019. And a lot of those were largely foundational. So we had a lot of sort of work to do, I guess, in terms of getting the right foundations in place from a financial perspective. So implemented a new financial system, significantly improved our internal financial and management reporting, so that we've got the visibility of that, and the respective departmental managers and cost centre managers can see and understand their costs and income as well. So get a really good view on their financial results for their respective area. So also made some structural changes, a whole lot of stuff, I guess, in terms of to try and move us forward. We identified some low-hanging fruit as part of that process in terms of from a sort of financial improvement perspective, and we've largely sort of gone through and implemented a lot of those initiatives, and that's what we've been reporting on to council on a quarterly basis. What we did and what was discussed at executive leadership team meeting was that we needed to sort of pivot, I guess, and look at and have a new financial sustainability program going forward, and that was, you may recall, at the April and then at the June council meeting when we were talking about our integrated planning and reporting and the long-term financial plan. And one of the things that I endeavoured to stress at that was that there was probably 4 or 5 pages within that long-term financial plan, which was a revised financial sustainability program. So with the knowledge that we've got now and based on the work we've done over the last few years, is to go, what are those key things which we think will hopefully shift the needle from a financial sustainability perspective? So I know it can be a little bit confusing in the report. So the items that you referred to, Councillor Wyatt, were the sort of the first iteration of that. And that's what we've been reporting on. But going forward now, we'll be largely focused on those 14 or 15 items that have been clearly articulated in our long-term financial plan as being the items that we believe are important for us to deliver as we sort of continue on this sort of path towards hopefully achieving financial sustainability. And that includes things like looking at our structure, looking at our services, the cost of the services, considerations of special rate variations, a whole lot of stuff in there that we need to consider. And we have got a program in place now to start prioritising those and working through those, and you'll get visibility of our progress against those in future quarterly reports. answers the question. If while I've got the microphone, if I can just clarify, just to give sort of context, on page 27, there is a chart there, and I know the font can be reasonably small. I just wanted to be able to, it's what finance book, we love these waterfall charts. So just to put it in context, maybe for non-financial people, it's to sort of effectively show a causal track or build the bridge, if you like, from what we set out from a budget perspective to where we landed on actuals. And so it's to show those items that either had a positive financial impact, which are in green, versus those other items which are in red, which may have had a negative financial impact. And so the net impact of those, each item, compared to the budget for those, is what we sort of tried to show. So where it's got a green bar, it's actually we've done a bit better, and the red bar is where we've done a little bit worse. What we do is that we take out of that the capital grants and contributions, given that they distort our underlying operating result, and that they're non-recurrent. So we remove those. Because we already include the depreciation charge anyway, and so that removes. So when we're looking and talking about our deficit and financial sustainability, we're looking at that excluding those capital grants and contributions. So yeah, I know it looks a bit busy, but I guess from our perspective, it's trying to provide as much information and as much transparency around the movement, so that that people sort of get a good sense of the contributing factors to that result, and how it differs to what we had budgeted to achieve.
Thank you, Mr. Director Mitchell.
Just ask a following question. Just a following question.
Okay, Councillor Patterson, please.
Just a following question to Director Mitchell, just in related to the waterfall chart that you're showing us. Just a bit of an update on why the user charges and fees were in the red, and what user charges and fees that they may be. That water and sewer, is that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so there is a comment in there, but I guess it was only $500,000 less than the budget. Largely relates to water usage charges, which we believe is largely due to the fact there's been so much rain, and so there was less actual water consumption. Yeah.
Councillor Saul.
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I want to congratulate the Council of 2016 and 21 on pushing through and getting the Point Plummer Road sealed. That was a major item to be done in the community, and now it's a wonderful road. So again, thank the Council General Manager, staff, and the previous councils who supported that, so the community has a very decent road.
Thank you. I think that it was a unanimous decision of the council back then. Thank you, Mr. General Manager.
It just, I'm not sure if any councillor got any other question, we can take those. I'd just like to make a comment and pick up on what Councillor White said about the 81%. I think you are right, Councillor White. I think it's been a significant effort by the staff, and I just want to say that the delivery of a program that you as council set out for us is something that, right from the executive leadership through the senior leadership, our coordinators, team leaders, and all the staff really dedicate their time and effort to. We do have fantastic staff in this Shire, and those results are a reflection of the work that those 350 plus staff actually deliver day in, day out across all conditions. And often for a lot of staff, it's 24/7, and we don't see a lot of the call outs that they do, the work that's happening at 2 a.m, those sorts of things. But we have fantastic staff, and these results really are a reflection of their commitment, their dedication, and their expertise.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. If there's no further debate, I will put the motion after I ask Councillor White if she wishes to speak to it.
No, just reiterate my comments about well done.
Okay, thank you. Is there any dissent on the motion before you on page 25? If not, I declare it carried, and I adjourn the meeting for the next 15 minutes for morning tea, or 20 minutes. Back at 5:05. Welcome back, everyone. We only have a few more items to go on the agenda for this council meeting. Our next item on the agenda is on page 38. It's 9.8, employment zones reforms. The recommendation is that council receive and note the submissions made on the employment zone reforms for KLEP 2013. Would someone like to move that? Councillor Bain. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ferguson, please. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to it?
Just to, to identify that we're receiving and noting the submissions that come from business owners and retail, and there was no objections. And I think the comment response from council was from council staff was very clarified the issues. So I commend that we receive and note these submissions. Thank you.
Thank you. I withdrew it because I wish to speak against it, and I will be voting against it. And I would like to tell you why. It's just a general principle that these decisions of the Department of Planning and Environment are being imposed on our community. They are decisions where we can't go out and consult the community on whether the zones have changed. They are something that I think we should bring back to more local decisions. That, on principle, is why I'm voting against it, and I've spoken against it, but I'm quite happy for people to support it. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Wyatt, please.
Could we just have a bit of an explanation? I mean, the attachments are 500 pages, which I had a bit of a skim through, but didn't digest. And I read the one from the other person, the other agency. But yeah, I mean, can you just explain, particularly around the purpose? I know, yeah, can you explain what this is all about, please?
Mr. General Manager, please.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, there will be an explanation from a non-planner about planning. However, essentially what it is, and this is a statewide change. It's not just for us. It's a statewide change that's actually occurring. As the department have looked at the zonings, and particularly around employment land, and that they have modified those, they've streamlined those to, I guess, to reflect what they believe is a more appropriate reflection of what is needed in those various zones that they looked at with this. And that's really where it's come from. They do, with the LEP, and some of these do have to try and get almost one size fits all across the state, which is not easy to do. But they have gone through that, and in this case, we're required to work with them on that. We did put these things on exhibition. The comments all went through the planning portal and all went through to the Department of Planning for their consideration in doing this. The role we have is actually to note these the submissions and to receive them.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Councillor Bain, please.
Question: is there a cost to council in any way of implementing these reforms? Is it another cost shifting from state, for example?
Mr. General Manager.
Through Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't say this is a cost shifting exercise from the state government. Is there cost to us? Yeah. Yes, there is, in that our staff will have to get their heads across this change and things like that, but that's similar to any change in any legislation. It's not really a cost shifting thing.
Mr. Farragut, did you want to say something?
No, awesome. Sorry, my keyboard hit the button.
Thank you. Councillor Wyatt, please.
I'm just having a quick look at the attachment for Kempsey. Do we know specifically if there's any changes, any controversial, and maybe Councillor Patterson, being an employer of lands, might know as well? I don't know. But is there any changes that are significantly different for our LGA?
Thank you. It's on what page, Mr. General Manager? Sorry. On page 193 of the attachment. You will see Kempsey Shire Council and the changes are there, Councillor Wyatt. We'll take a moment for you to find that.
That's that item there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go to 195.
Through Mr. Mayor, there's certainly some changes because what they've done is combine the B6 permissible with consent and the B6 prohibited, and it's become the future zones of E3 permitted with consent. Not being a planner, not knowing the detail, there are some changes, but looking at them, they're not what I'm seeing as really significant changes. And certainly if they were significant and there was concern, our planning staff would have expressed those to me in the early stage of this, and there's been no real concern raised by the staff.
So we won't be having helipads in the middle of Kempsey.
So what was, sorry, so there, it's an
Councillor White again, please.
Sorry. So it's an E3 zone. What was it? Was that what it was called formerly in the LEP as well?
My understanding it was B6 with consent and B6 without consent.
Okay.
And now they've converted that to an E3 is my understanding of it.
Any comment from the back? No. Thank you. Manager Snow. Councillor Riddington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I please ask Mr. Mayor, can you just explain for me why you're voting against it? And would you put up an alternative, please, just so that I can understand?
Yes, for sure. I'm actually not supposed to speak again on the motion, but I will answer your question.
Thank you.
I see the big picture of the Department of Planning and Environment based in Sydney imposing things on council throughout the state. And I am of the opinion as a council we should be the nearest decision maker to what our community wants. That's basically why I'm taking that position.
Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions or debate, Councillor Bain? No? You can finish, Councillor Bain. Yes, you can conclude the debate.
I'm finished. Oh,
Okay, I'd like to conclude the debate.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Patterson, I'd like you to speak now. I'm sorry I didn't see you earlier.
Just in relation to the zonings and strategies that we have in the Shire, it's definitely something as a business person that we need. We can't mix retail, manufacturing and industrial. There's reasons that those zonings are there, and every now and then those zonings need to be shifted in relation to requirements and needs, the movement of business in the town, the population growth, lots of different things, So my business is in a industrial area in the middle of town, because I'm a manufacturer, So then retail business, obviously, in commercial areas, So I think the government's obviously just trying to put some type of legislation and even playing field for the majority of the business community in the state.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Wyatt.
So I'm glad for these questions because you're giving me time to digest what I'm looking at. So what I can see here is that just correct me if I'm wrong, but what I can see is that the zone is B6 and the proposal is to change it to E3. It talks about what is permitted in those zones with and without consent. And then the changes are, there's only four things that have changed in the zone. So animal boarding, pond-based agriculture, recreation, vehicle body repairs, and vehicle repair stations. So that's, apart from the actual name of the zone changing from B6 to E3, we've got those four things that are new permissible in that zone. That's my reading of that.
Thank you, Councillor Wyatt.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the final bit there. That's the changes we've got in our LGA. Thank you very much, Councillor Bain, please.
Yes, thank you, Marangbu, Mr. Mayor. I take your point that that there are concerns that powers from local government are constantly being eroded by state government and state planning authorities. However, this motion in front of it is just to note submissions received, and So I commend it to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll put the motion. Those people who are dissenting, please raise your hand. And it's just me. Thank you very much. I declare it carried. And the final item before we go to confidential is on page 44. It's got notice of motion, questions with notice. We cannot discuss or talk about this, but I'm just pointing this out to our new councillors. If you put a question in writing to the General Manager, he'll find the answers from the rest of his staff as usual. And the answer will be here for you to look at the next council meeting. So prior to the close of date for these, which is 8 business days out before a council meeting, you can put a question in with notice for an answer to be published in the agenda. So that's all that serves to do when you see questions with notice, is that you can read it, but there's no debate and there's no questioning of the answer. Is that correct, Mr. General Manager? Thank you. So that's the end of the open council. We need a motion to move into confidential so we can deal with 11.1. A motion to move into confidential by Councillor Saul. We need a seconder to move into confidential. Councillor Butterfield, thank you. I'll put the motion that we move into confidential. Any dissent on that motion? I declare it carried. It's a resolution. We now move into confidential, and I'm asking the gallery to be cleared. And look, it's been cleared very quickly. Thank you very much.
In relation to the resolutions taken by council in closed session and the earlier resolution taken as part of the items passed by exception, in relation to item 11.1 legal matters, council resolved the council receive and note the report. In relation to item 11.2 Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting minutes 27 July 2022, council resolved the council note the draft meeting minutes from the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee 27 July 2022.
Thank you, Manager Thorogood. As there is no further business on the agenda, I declare the meeting closed.